End of October. Friday night, we will be resuming our in-person Shabbat services. Sometimes they'll be in the sanctuary, but we also will be holding them outside in our sukkah, depending upon the weather. But we need you to pre-register because we can only accept so many people each Friday. So break down those doors, be the first to register off the temple website.
It's really beautiful outside, so please join us.
And you do the registration right off the website. On the 31st, what's going on the 31st? Noah Shabbat, what's that about?
Well, you might hear October 31st and your first thought is Halloween.
Halloween, beautiful holiday.
Yes. And we don't want to take away from the plans that you might have on Saturday night. We hope you're being safe. But we do have plans on Saturday morning, on Shabbat morning, that you still get to dress up for, even though we're not celebrating Halloween. It is Noah Shabbat. We're going to have a petting zoo. Everybody loves a petting zoo.
Oh, that's great. What time is that going to be?
It's at 9:30. We're going to have a short little service, and then we're going to pet the animals and celebrate Shabbat by celebrating the animals.
These are not virtual animals. These are
real
live animals.
Yes.
Oh, so I'm going to be there.
I'm going to be there.
Okay.
I love the animals.
All right, yeah, it's going to be terrific. But if you want more of a virtual animal activity, tomorrow, October 24th at 2 p.m., Rabbi Cookie Olshine is doing a blessing for your pets. So you sign on via the website on Zoom. She has a little ceremony. You'll be there with your hamster or your dog or your cat or whatever your pet might be, and she'll have a beautiful ceremony so that you can feel a little bit spiritually closer to your pet. Some people are wondering, what are we doing besides Shabbat services, religious school? We have some member activities. Trivia night has started to become very popular. So October 27th, they're going to be doing the history of rock and roll. So it should be, and it'll again be through Zoom, and we hope that you will sign up for that. That's through the membership committee. And of course, we have our adult ed programs, which are pretty full, but they are on Tuesday and Wednesday night. So please get involved in the temple. We look forward to seeing you virtually part of us, and at times, whether it's Sunday school or Friday night services, in person so that we can see you. Masked or not, we want to see you here at Ner Tamid.
And just a quick reminder for anyone that didn't catch it last week, Sunday school is now from 9 to 10:55 for anyone joining us in person. And then if you're still joining us on the virtual school, which is great too, 11 to 12, just following our in-person session. So if you're there at 10:30 to pick up your child, they're not going to be ready for you yet. So you get another extra 25 minutes to enjoy your Starbucks in the morning.
All right, enough announcements. Let's get started with services. Ricky, Shalom Aleichem.
Let's welcome the Shabbat angels.
All right. Page 142.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Malachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitkhem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Go ahead, bring out your candlesticks, and we usher in the Shabbat with the mitzvah of kindling the Shabbat lights. Page 120, 121.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary, whether in your home or in this space, in need. All who bring the offerings of their heart. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
welcoming in the Shabbat with Lachado D, page 138, 139.
Verses 1, 2, and 9.
Standing for the Baruch, page 146. We turn the page. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
Baruch atah Adonai Hamari Varavi.
As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery.
Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leolam Avad.
Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. You may be seated. What do you think about those B'nai Mitzvah students out there?
I want to see some selfies of them leading Ve'ahavta because I think they need to be preparing for their B'nai Mitzvah even though they're not here with us tonight. So sing along with me, chant along with me, and send me a video, and I want to check it out.
All right.
Ve'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל הכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נהדר בקודש כיפת אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will.
Be our shelter from life's storms.
Continue on page 164, 165 with the Amidah. Please rise if you are able. Pray as if everything depended on God. Act as if everything depended on you.
Adonai sefatai tiftachu fia yitegilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magein, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magein Abraham Ezra Tzara, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei Yaakov, Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, B'Shenei Afar, Michamocha B'Gevurot, U'Midom Melech, Melech Mimit, U'Mechayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'Ne'eman Atal HaChayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol, Atah Kadosh, Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kadoshim B'chol Yom V'Halocha Selah, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
We continue in silent devotion through page 180 using the words on the right or the left side of the page or the words within your heart. When you have completed your prayers, please be seated. We turn to page 371 for our Misha Berach prayer.
If you'd like to submit names to our web stream so that the community can be aware of those for whom you are praying, please do so at this time. And so our thoughts turn to my sister Dina, Paul Schiffman, Jill Ballack, Patrick Fellows, Amy Bennett DeFrank, Art Marshall, Devorah Bat Malka, Elaine Enton, Roger Marcus, Ava Marcus Nasimo, Taryn Beardson, Lauren Molaski, Ali Weinberg, Irving Zaid, Barbara Baum, Cassia Preddy, Barbara Carroll, and Dee Bale. There's so many of us who have loved ones that we're thinking of at this time. And so we ask that God bring strength and courage to those who are facing illness, and that God bring to those who are caregivers patience and courage and strength as well. As we think of all those who are part of our circle of friends, and family, and loved ones, we join together in our Misha Baruch prayer. Good Shabbos, everyone. This week's Torah portion, Parshat Noach, tells a familiar story of Noah and the flood. From most of our childhood memories, we can recall that Noah was told by God that the world was going to be destroyed by a gigantic flood that would cover the entire globe. Only Noah and his family would survive. Only they would be spared to start the world anew. And we also recall how Noah was to have 2 of every living creature that walked upon the face of the earth join him. The vessel of their salvation would be a gigantic ark that Noah would build. You know, I'm often asked whether stories such as the ones found in the early parts of the Torah are true. Was there really an Adam and an Eve? Was there really a Noah, and so forth? And while there are some religious traditions that do take the stories of the Bible literally, Reform Judaism is not one of them. However, this does not mean that the stories aren't true. Noted scholar Karen Armstrong provides an important insight into this issue. She argues that the idea of truth as logos and mythos. Logos is literal scientific truth, and mythos is narratives that teach us how to live in God's universe. Religion is not about logos, but mythos. If I want to learn science, I turn to scientific textbooks. But if I want to learn about life's meaning, I turn to the Tanakh, to the Bible. The creation story is true because it teaches me truths about what it means to be a human being. In the creation story, we learn that man is created in the image of God. That's an important lesson because it reminds us that everything we do is supposed to reflect upon God's godliness, that in fact we are partners with God in perpetuating this globe and in protecting it, as I talked about last week. Now, in the story of Noah and the flood, we learn a little bit about ancient society, which also has many versions of flood stories, but the version found in the Torah has an important distinction. Ours has an ethical component. Noah is not presented as this holy person. He is, in fact, a pagan and happens to be described as Ish Tzaddik B'Doroto. He is a righteous man in his generation. In fact, it could be argued that if he lived at a different time, he would not be judged as a righteous man at all. After all, unlike Abraham, who was told to warn the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, if he could find righteous people, well, and stop God from destroying them. Noah does none of that. Abraham says, look, God, don't destroy them. If I find 50 righteous people, will you stop? God says, sure. He says, if I find 40, would you stop? God says, sure. 30, 20. Finally, if Abraham can find 10 righteous people, God would spare Sodom and Gomorrah. And we know from the story that was not to be, and their fate was sealed. Noah, on the other hand, decides to save only his family. The rest of humanity, not so much. And when the story ends, what happens? He gets drunk and he gets involved in some unseemly activities. Not exactly the hero we would expect. We've had a lot of discussion in our society as of late when it comes to examining our history. We have taken to task our glorification of historical figures whose legitimacy continues to bring pain to those living in the present. Perhaps they were considered ish tzaddik b'doroto. Perhaps they were considered righteous people in their generation by their standards, but not by today's standards. We have re-examined other periods of our history and recognized that in pursuing what we felt were the best interest of our country, sometimes we trampled on the rights of others. Sometimes out of fear or political conquest, or because our view of people was in conflict as we viewed other people as inferior. And so today, in today's society, we have a time of reckoning. Historian Carl Becker once said this of the value of history. The value of history is indeed not scientific, but moral. By liberalizing the mind, by deepening the sympathies, by fortifying the will, it enables us to control not society, but ourselves. A much more important thing. It prepares us to live more humanely in the present and to meet rather than to foretell the future. The racial divide in our country in particular has caused many to feel, for example, that the statues of the Confederacy should come down, that they are a painful reminder of slavery in the Confederacy. I couldn't agree more. Those statues should come down. On the other hand, I'm not so sure if they should be destroyed. Perhaps they should be put together in a collection with an educational display or placed in a museum that teaches young people why these men and their actions should not be held up as examples of today's values. Let them learn about the past. Let them argue with the challenges that we went through in American history. What would they do? What would they have done? And how do they feel today? Let that museum be a celebration of how we have grown as a society. I would also argue that there should be a process by the community where these statues exist, lest we succumb to a mob mentality. In mid-October, protesters in Portland, Oregon overturned statues of Teddy Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln in a declaration of rage toward Columbus Day. Really? So, oftentimes, history is more nuanced than a mob can discern. And while there would be those who do not want to celebrate Christopher Columbus because of how Native Americans were treated, I doubt that any of those would argue that we should, for example, dismantle the United States of America. Public support for leaving Confederate monuments standing is coming down faster than statues of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. In June 6th and 7th, there was a plurality, a 44% plurality of respondents in a national Morning Consult political poll that said Confederate statues should remain standing, while only 32% said they should be taken down. But that number has flipped in just a few short months. The majority of white Americans agree the statues need to come down, and among blacks, 84% of black Americans support removing Confederate statues from public spaces nationwide. So I think it is important for each generation to understand its history and to understand who it is considered an ish tzaddik b'doroto. Who is a righteous man in their generation? Don't shy from sad chapters in history and the notion that some historical figures were righteous in their generation but not ours. If we gloss over the distinctions, we fail to understand how we have matured as a society. And if we focus only on the character of the individual and not his or her actions, that they did achieve something for the betterment of society. If we don't focus on both parts, then we lose sight of why these people might be celebrated in the first place and what they did give to our society so that we could be where we are today. One of the things that I cherish most in our tradition is the examination of the patriarchs, warts and all. Listen, Abraham was going to sacrifice his son Isaac on the altar of God. Moses killed an Egyptian. Jacob stole his birthright from his brother by trickery. Again and again we see warts and all our patriarchs. We can revere them and we can understand them in the context of the time that they lived, and we can let their actions that ultimately shaped our history and our society for the better shine forward, while at the same time disparage those actions that we have trouble with. It doesn't necessarily have to be an either or. Sometimes it does, but other times we wrestle with our past, and that is a good thing. A couple of years ago, I had a special visit to Israel. I traveled to see Ramat HaNegev, which is one of those areas of special interest to those living in Las Vegas. It's in the southern region of the Negev Desert. It was a great trip, and I saw with my own eyes how Ben-Gurion's vision of investing and settling in the Negev was finally becoming a reality. But one of the segments of this trip was not only looking at Ramat HaNegev, but this small enclave called Shazaf. It composes 25 families, Reformed, Conservative, Orthodox, all who decided to leave the main part of Israel and resettle into this desolate area and form what they hoped would be a society of civility where all streams of Judaism would live side by side. Quite an accomplishment considering how we might view the Torah differently, how we observe Shabbat differently, and yet they wanted to make a go of it. It is an incredible experiment, and what they hope is to bridge the political and religious divide which now exists in Israel. A divide in a country, and a segment of people hoping and praying, literally, to talk to one another and bridge that divide. Sound familiar? Yeah. What's going on in Israel is, of course, going on in America, perhaps not necessarily along religious lines, as I mentioned, but on racial lines and other divides as well. But the point is, we need to learn to talk to one another. We need our own experiment, but not of 25 families, of millions of people who understand that whether you are on the left or on the right, or whether you're an independent, you cannot vilify the other, you cannot shut them down, you cannot discount them as human beings or disparage their thoughts. We have to learn to talk one to the other. Because if we don't, what we're left with is a cacophony of noise that gets us nowhere as a society, where neighbor turns on neighbor and we constantly fight with each other. Listen, we don't need to be perfect as a people, but we do need more people who are ish tzaddik b'doroto, people who do not let the perfect get in the way of the good. We have to learn to compromise, to understand that this go around, we can't build an ark for just one family. We may be in the same storm, but we are not in the same boat. And so we must weather this storm together, finding ways to express our voices, work together, and celebrate that which unites us. I think if we stop shouting and we just listen to each other, Perhaps there is more we agree upon than we realize. In the words of the inspirational speaker, Lila Gifty Akita, what a mighty nation we will be if we encourage one another. Shabbat Shalom. We continue our services now with our concluding prayers. The adoration found on page 586.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'chol, ha'teish g'dula li'otzer b'reshit, shelo asanu pigui ha'ratzot, v'lo asabanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kecho hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech, Malchei HaMalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz, bayom ha'o, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Our Kaddish prayer is found on page 598. If you'd like to share with the community names of loved ones who have passed on, please put their names in our chat, in our web stream. We say Kaddish for Jordan Goodman, Corey Jackson, Joan Webb. We recall the yortzites of Isidore Benson, Dr. Robert F. Beyer, Ida Blumenfeld, Fred Bradfield, Evelyn Parcher-Chenin, Arthur Cohen, Dr. Leon Danzig, Ida DeGrazia, Pearl Fink, Esther Free, Samuel Getzel, Gilbert Goldstein, Al Honigman, David Johnson, Franklin Katz, Morris Kaufman, Norman Lafer, Marjorie Lieberman, Sonia Lutnick, Clara Nathanson, Marilyn Leon Parnas, Lois Pastrana, Frida Pittler, Lawrence Rosenberg, Rebecca Rosenberg, Ann Sandell, Richard Satz, Michael Schoenfeld, Mary May Seitzer Rosen, Sylvia Slocum, Saul Stillman, Helen Strumpf, and Philip Toffel. We think for a moment of those who are part of our lives, who inform our values, who've given us love, as we join together in our Kaddish prayer. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei rabbah, v'yalma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayedechol Beit Yisrael, v'agalav b'zman kariv yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam omei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudshah b'richu, le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiram b'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlom harabba min shamai v'chayim, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom b'mramav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to which we say, Amen. All right. Let's have a little challah, a little wine.
All right, so our challah tonight is sponsored by Congregation Near to Me, so that was easy. And we get two little mini ones. We don't even need gloves tonight. We get our own challah.
Oh, we get our own?
Yeah.
Well, we need some more sponsors, so
We do.
give them a pitch.
We are running out of sponsors, so if you were thinking about it, I'm going to put a link up on the temple website. so that you can sign up to be a challah sponsor on any of these weeks. You can get as creative as you want. You can make shapes. You can put in flavors, and
You can go to the store if you don't bake and
you can go
donate.
to the store.
That's
But
right.
this is
That's
in
what
lieu
I
of-
would do.
This is in lieu of sponsoring the oneg, because we don't have an oneg right now, but this way you can still be part of our services in person. And as we are opening up again, people will begin to take part in sharing in whatever your creation is. So.
All right. Very good.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Amen. All right, little baby hollahs. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
All right.
It almost looks like a bagel, but it's a
Not a
challah.
bagel, it's a challah. You know, wouldn't it be nice if we could have some congregants here in this sanctuary?
It would be so nice.
Well, how could we do that virtually? Isn't there a project?
Yeah,
that they
so
were
we're
working on?
trying to fill the sanctuary with your beautiful faces. And we have, I don't know, was it 100? We have 100 people or so in our
I think you
congregation.
should show them.
I'm going to show you a picture of it.
All right, don't let the camera fool you. Here we go.
And I know that, we're opening up in person, but we won't be fully open yet. And there's many of you that are still in that high risk category. We want to feel like you are here. And look at that. I mean, it really looks real. Like, it looks like you are there smiling at us, and it makes us feel so good to see your faces. So please sign up for this project. It's called All Blown Up. You can find the link on our website or on the e-blast. And it's only $54 a person. I believe children are free or some kind of discount, but we want your whole family in our congregation. So please join us.
All right, let's join together in our final song. Ricky, thank you so much. Take it away. That's good.
Oseh shalom b'romo